So, welcome to Snow White and the Duality. Tonight's going to be a little different than I've told a tale before, but it'll be interesting. So, we're not going to do it where I go through the tale, blah, 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 like I always do. We're going to do this a different way. So, I want to start by introducing the concept of mythic witchery. So, mythic witchery is a really intense practice that is done throughout the witchcraft community. Some women specialize it. It is their extreme specialty, like Danielle Dolsky. She proclaims herself to be a mythic witch. That is the type of witch she is. And I love that. I love that whole aspect. I love that whole dwelling. It's a very deep connection to ancestry and tales to pull forth the magic from the void, which is amazing. And it uses a spell container, and we tell stories, and we use archetypes, and we use oracle cards, and it's amazing. I myself am a huge fan of mythic witchery, but I am a bigger fan of paradox witchery. So the paradox witchery allows you to step into the tale, see all the things that are relevant to you, the ebb, the flow, the negative, the positive, and pull them out to use them within your magic. So in this story, we see the mother archetype, the good and the bad of a mother. We see the virgin concept with the final realization of the true love in Snow White. We see these dwarves presented in many different ways. So the dwarves present very different in Grimm than they do in Disney. So you see the patriarchal archetype also come out of Snow White being a caretaker for these little men. Okay. And we're taking for granted the things that were being told by Disney because very few of us had parents that went back to the Grimm origin. They let Disney raise us if we're in Gen X. We're very Gen X kids. So going in to find the fairy tale was our job. I grew up in the public school system. Library was a huge part of my upbringing, and I had the most wonderful librarian in the whole world. I'll fight you on this. This woman was the epitome of the storyteller. She came in a hat. She always had a witch's hat on, or she had a stocking hat on. And she always was telling the most amazing tales from the most amazing books, had the voices, all of the things. And for a little girl who was really in tune with her purple crayon and seeing the clouds for animals and what was above me, she was the ticket. Mrs. Blackway was my epitome of the most magical Miss Fizzle you've ever seen. She was my Miss Frizzle. Like, she was it. She was it for me. It wasn't until I got older that I realized she was Dr. Blackway. She had a doctorate in folklore. And I never knew this as a kid because she didn't go by Dr. Blackway. She went by Mrs. Blackway. And at the holidays, she was Elf Blackway. And at Halloween, she was Spooky Blackway. And she always had amazing things for us. She had a story rug, and it was an old Persian rug. Her husband was an archaeologist. So, were these not the coolest people on the whole face of the earth? Probably. Like, I wish they would have adopted me, took me from my parents, and I could have lived with them in their house. These were the people I wanted to grow up with. But Mrs. Blackway introduced me to fairy tales. And she didn't introduce me to fairy tales like Disney fairy tales. She introduced me to Grimm's fairy tales. And she introduced me to Arabian Nights. And she introduced me to all the most wonderful things. And I am forever grateful for her because I really feel, made me the witch I am today because she brought magic to life for me. And what so many people forget is the old section of a bookstore with your mythic tales has as much magic as a magical book you can find. So when we greet this tale, we're going to greet this tale on three levels. We're going to greet it on what we know, what we think we know, and what we need to know. So this story starts, and if you all haven't seen this on TikTok, yes, I bought this book. I bought the horror book. Are you ready? I'm going to show you my book. Don't get jealous. You can get one too. Okay. So you open this. I even have my old lady reader in here. So hold on. You're going to see my big old magnifying glass because I can't see anything these days. And let me just show you how this book starts. It shows you where all the tales came from. This is a Grimm's book, okay? So you go in and you see all those tales, and then you come in and you come to this beautiful welcome page of Snow White. It's stunning. To hold it is a sight to be seen. So we're greeted by this tale when we start of a queen sitting in the window on a snowy day and wishing for a child. Now, when we see this, she says exactly, because I printed this out so I could see it bigger for you guys. If only I had a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black of the ebony of the window frame. So, okay, let's just start there. She manifested her little girl. She sat in that window doing her embroidery and manifested the most beautiful little angel in the world. Me being a mom of a child that came from nowhere, I so identify with this mom. I wanted a Sarek so bad. My husband's name's Eric. My name is Sissy. I wanted a Sarek. There was no way that Sarek should be here. Here she is. So we have this beautiful child that is manifested from pure love because this queen loved this king so much. And here she is, Snow White, the epitome of pure love, purest form of love. Mother wanted her more than anything in the world. You don't see that in the Disney tale. You're just told a little girl is born and here she is, and then boom, mom dies, right? It- I hate this aspect of fairy tales. Why's mom always got to die? This is not fair. Why we always got to die? Okay. But in comes the vicious bitch with her magic mirror and her vanity. Now, Disney is going to tell you this little girl's 12 years old. So this tells me this little girl endured 12 years with this vicious bitch, correct? She lived in this environment with this little, but Grimm tells you it lasted 7 years. 7 years was all the torment this evil queen could tolerate of this beautiful little girl. Number one, let's throw it out here the way it is. Let's not even beat around the bush. This little girl was her mommy's pride and joy, and daddy's probably pride and joy. And Meanie Queenie is not having none of this bullshit. This little bitch got to go because I only one queen around here, and it is me. So she calls the royal huntsman in. Take this child, dispose of her. Because the mirror, in her its wisdom, tell me glass, tell me true. Of all the ladies in the land, who is fairest? Tell me who. And the glass always answers her, till that day when it tells her Snow White is the fairest in the land. 7 years old, that's it. Time to get rid of her. She's prettier than me. Oh, comes this age old envy. Envy rears its ugly head. You see this in the Disney tale, but not at the extent of how righteously wrong this is. A 7-year-old little girl. This isn't a 14-year-old girl, which, by the way, 14 then is our 18 now, okay? So, 7, she probably was going to be promised to a foreign king, not promised to someone there in the land, okay? And her daddy didn't love her more than the queen, or the queen wouldn't be sitting where she was, correct? So, survey says queen is a malicious bitch. Okay? So, imagine this 7-year-old little girl being drugged by the huntsman to the woods. No, they weren't out on a trail. They weren't out for the day. He took her to the woods. There was no reason for this 7-year-old little girl to go to the woods. This isn't the fantasy like you see in the Disney tale. Oh, they went to the woods and the animals were running and blah. No, this is some malcontent here. Like this little girl was going to die, and she knew that's what was happening. So she's pleading with the huntsman, please let me go. I'll never come back. Please, please, please. One iota of care in his heart. That's it. That's all he had. One little iota, because he knew the queen would kill him if he did not return with her lungs and her heart. Like lungs. Like that's like autopsying this child. That's what this queen wanted. What is going through her heart? Her head, well, she probably didn't have a heart, let's be honest. But what is going through her? This woman is pure evil. Grimm is telling you, this bitch is bad. Okay? Disney's like, "Oh, she's vain." We get the Disney part of it. She's vain. And then Disney has to step it up in their version. She asked for the heart. Then we flip forward to Once Upon a Time, where the evil queen keeps the hearts in the wall with the boxes and she gathers them up and uses them to torture people. Hey, give them credit. They stepped it up a little bit. They made her a vicious crime in this one, okay? So he goes in and he sees this wild boar run across. He kills the wild boar and Snow White runs off. Okay? So 7-year-old girl running through the forest, terrified for her life. Literally. She's never been outside the castle. She's royalty. She doesn't know how to exist here. Notice Grimm doesn't tell you the story that Disney tells you that the queen made her a peasant in the castle. No, we don't hear that. She's treated as a princess till this moment where she's cut off. She's done. You are the fairest in the land. You cannot live here. Leave. So this is a little girl who really doesn't have her street smarts about her. She's grown up in the castle. She's 7. Like, keep that in your mind. 7 in this tale. Not 14, not 15. She's 7. So she runs out. She sees the first cottage she can get into and she gets in. This is where I love Grimm, okay? We don't have the patriarchal bullshit we have in Disney. Grimm says she goes in and the house is orderly. The house is neat. There's a meal upon the table. These dwarves are taking care of themselves. They're fully functioning without Snow White. Here you look at Disney. Oh, they're a mess. Everything's a mess. They can't function without a mommy. They're not going to be okay. So Snow White goes from being the princess to being the dwarf's mommy in this archetype. Classic patriarchal overtaking of the tale. Okay? So let's go to Grimm. She goes in, she sees food there on the table, she sees warm beds, she eats a little bit off each plate. Grimm takes you to the Three Little Bears version of this. The dwarf comes in. Something's eaten off my plate. The second dwarf, something's eaten off my plate. Something's laid in my bed. And then they find Snow White in a bed. Kind of similar to Goldilocks, don't you think? Same mechanism. I mean, if you're writing fairy tales, you got to use the formula somewhere along the line. As a mythic witch, you'll find out the formula's fucking important. Okay? So they go in, they go through the 7 dwarfs. None of them have names, by the way. Nobody has a name in the Grimm tale. None of them are named. There's no there's no sins, there's no sloth, there's no bullshit, there's no underlying religious tones in this tale till Disney gets the fuck a hold of it. Remember that. Okay? So that's not written into this because the Grimm's really not talking about that. We're talking right or wrong, not Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Okay? Disney brings that in. So remember that the woke archetype that they are now, once upon a time, bought the Catholic Church diagram. Okay? So remember this. So they come up to her. She's like, please. She tells them her story. They know she's royalty. They know she's hiding from this queen. I'd assume they've heard what a wicked bitch this queen is. I'm sure that word's gone through the kingdom, what she is, because you can't hide that kind of vanity. You don't need a magic mirror to see that bullshit. Okay? But you have the Disney tale, and she's like, "Oh, I will care for you and clean for you and sing for you." And she's walking outside the thing, and fucking birds are coming in, cleaning the cabin, and fucking deer are bringing her apples. You know, we go into Hollywood beautifying of a terrible situation. So this little 7-year-old girl needs to learn how to take care of herself within this community of dwarfs who are caring for her. Of course, the dwarfs are hardworking and they leave the house every day. Very male archetype. She stays home. They go out. Think about that. They even have a fancy song, hi ho, and they all walk off to the mines. They get the little diamond eyes, full circle, man. We get a fucking musical number as they go off to work, and we're all looking at this as kids because it was a big deal. It's 84 years old. You realize Disney's telling of this is 84 years old. Okay. So you see even this jolly theme when you go to Disney. You see Snow White dancing, holding her bottom of her skirt, round the room with Dopey, all the things, right? But what you don't see is Snow White's there for a long time till the queen gets another mean streak in her and checks the mirror. Probably feeling a little peckish. Crow's feet are coming up. Just wants to make sure she's the fairest bitch in the land in case she needs to send the huntsman to go kill somebody else, right? I would assume a couple years have passed. So Snow White's getting to the age of accountability at this point. Okay? Ask the mirror again. The mirror tells her to dismay Snow White is alive. This is where the tale changes with Grimm versus Disney. The queen doesn't go once with Grimm. She goes 3 times. The first time she goes as an old woman selling corsets, lassos the little girl up real tight, pulls her real tight. The dwarfs come flying home, and there's Snow White passed out. She can't breathe. The queen pulled her so tight in that dress, trying to kill her. Not trying to teach her a lesson, trying to kill her. Murder, attempted murder with intent. Okay? They unloosen her, cut her free, and she's breathing. The dwarfs go, "Hey, listen, dumbass. Someone's after you. Don't take things from people." Little while longer, the queen thinks she offed her, gives it a couple weeks, checks the mirror again. Fucking bitch is still alive. What the hell? So she changes herself into the old lady and walks back into the woods. This time she has a poison comb. And Snow White's vanity once again gets the best of her with her beautiful long locks. And the old woman's going, "You're so lovely. You should comb your hair. Do something nice for yourself." You know, like you get those ads in your email. "Buy yourself this. You deserve it. Buy the TikTok leggings. Buy the cream. You deserve it." Okay, so Snow White bites. So she's combing her hair and boom, down she goes because it's a poison comb, dumbass. Okay? Boom. She got her again. The dwarfs get home and the comb's stuck in her hair. They pull it out, and eventually the poison wears off and she comes to. So you would think twice bitten, right? Twice bitten. She knows something's up. Evil Queen goes in, does her hair, gets that mirror ready, buffs it up. "Who's the fairest in the land?" "Why, Snow White is." She goes, "That's it. This bitch is gonna die today. I'm done. She's gonna die today. I've had enough. Can't trust the huntsman. The corset didn't kill her. The comb didn't kill her. I'm gonna finish this fucking job." This is where you get the apple in both stories. So the apple is created. It is full of malice. What you see in the Grimm fairy tale in some areas is she goes to the royal wizard to get the apple. You don't see it in every Grimm tale, but in certain renditions, she goes to someone else to source it, a mage, okay? So it's very rare you find that tale that says that. But let's just take for sake that she's pretty much an evil bitch and did this on her own. I'll give her that, okay? So this time, we don't dress up as the old woman, so that puts the Disney fairy tale down as full of bullshit, right? No, she didn't dress up as the old woman this time. She went as a farmer's wife peddling apples. She had so many apples, she was going through the forest and sharing with her neighbors. So Snow White's out. Why would it hurt taking an apple from someone? This is a neighbor. She's offering me an apple. This isn't a peddler. This She's not asking for any money. She just wants to give me an apple. Grim tale. The apple's cut in half, and the woman offers to share it with her. Snow White's side is a different color than the farmer's wife's side. But Snow White, being the young, innocent, naive girl she is, bites down, falls back immediately, lights out. Queen is elated. "Holy shit, I finally did it. I killed this bitch." She checks her pulse, drops her down. She did it. Bitch is dead. Ding dong, the bitch is dead. She is now the fairest in the land. Fuck you all, deuces. She's out. Back to the castle. Yes, back to the castle. Nothing happens to her. Back to the castle in the Grimm tale. She got away with murder in this one. Grimm, she got away from murder momentarily. So the dwarfs come home and she's dead. They are beside themselves. They can't bear putting her in the earth. They love her so much. She has become part of their family. She is their ward. They adore her. They are heartbroken. So, what do dwarfs do? They make her a glass casket so they can watch over her. She sits for days in the forest in the Grimtail. Nothing disturbs her, nothing bothers her. She doesn't rot, she doesn't age, nothing. She is innocence divine in this moment. She is perfect innocence. She was so trusting, so loving. It's almost like sainthood for her. So she lays there, they put her in the glass coffin, and they keep her by the mine and watch after her. Keep dire watch on her. Now you go to the Disney tale. The evil queen bites it because she gets struck by lightning and she gets her comeuppance right there. It's done. The lightning does the queen in. You see it on her way back to the castle. She's done. Okay. So the queen's out of the picture way earlier in the Disney tale because in Disney, we need to make room for it. You know it's coming. You know it's coming. True love's kiss. Fucking A. It is on its way. Hold on. Here it comes. Here it comes. He's going to bring her back to life because every princess needs a prince to bring her back to life, right? What do we do? I'm waiting for the kiss. We're all sitting here stupid till we're like 25 and we realize we're kissing retards in tinfoil and there is no Prince Charming, okay? So we're standing there and they put her in the glass coffin. Same thing in the Disney tale. A king's daughter is written on this, not Snow White. A king's daughter. She still belongs to another man. For Christ's sakes, her dad left her go off and be killed, but he gets to own her, right? Patriarchal bullshit at its best, okay? So she's laying there in the coffin. The prince comes riding along on his horse. Oh, she is so beautiful. I am going to kiss her. He wants to kiss the dead girl. What's wrong with this fucking story, people? Okay, let's go kiss the dead girl. Okay, necrophilia, weirdo. What is wrong with you? That's a dead girl in a box. We don't kiss dead girls in boxes. This is all wrong. Okay, so Disney takes something beautiful and innocent from Grimm. Yeah, I just said that. Beautiful and innocent from Grimm because the archetype is virginity inside this crystal box. You realize that you're perfect and pure in your crystal box before you go kissing retards in tinfoil. Okay? And they stick their lance in you. Got it? The kiss? So he goes over. She's laying there with her hair like perfect. It's like her hair's so perfect. You know, that ebony hair and the beautiful red lips. And she's just resting. You know, like my husband looks at me and goes, "Isn't she beautiful when she's sleeping? Because she's a demon." And that's the prettiest I get. So you're laying back there. He kisses her. True love's kiss wakes her up. All is wonderful. The forest creatures run and dance. And we all know what happens, right? Happily ever after. Not the sight for Grimm. Not how it happens in Grimm. So a prince is traveling on the road. He stops at the table of the dwarfs because the dwarfs are known to be hospitable and help people on the voyage of this king's road. Yes, this is the king's road that they live upon. This is the king's domain. So I love this. Grimm does not call him the prince. They call him the king's son. So if you look at your religious version that pops out in the late 1870s, the prince gets replaced with the king's son. Jesus! There's Jesus! He's going to come resurrect her. Jesus! We get the Jesus mention. Okay. You ready for this? Okay. This is how scholars review this story. Okay. But he convinces the dwarfs, let me take care of her. Let me bring her back to the castle where she will be comfortable in a royal place and she won't have to be here. 4 footmen pick her up, carry her, and one trips on a fucking log. Guess what happens? They pop the apple out of her throat and she wakes the fuck up. What the fuck? So all this time, the bitch has been choking and nobody's checked. Do we not know about CPR? Did we not try to get the apple out of her throat? What is wrong here? Okay, so she's had a chunk of poison apple in her throat for all this time in this box. There's a girl in a box with a piece of apple in her throat. Pretty simple solution, right? Nobody had to kiss her. Nobody had to wake her up. She comes up out of the coffin. She sees him. He's amazing. It's love at first sight. There's your happily ever after, right? They go back to the castle. They're having the royal wedding. The prince says, let's invite your mother. She's told him the story of everything that's happened to her. She's like, okay, we'll invite her. This is where Snow White gets mad props from me. Are you ready? She says, yeah, bring the bitch. So they're having their party. The prince has a pair of shoes made, but now it's the evil queen. And he heats them with the blacksmith. And she comes to the castle and he says, please be our guest. She comes to the wedding. They put the shoes on and make her dance till she dies as punishment for what she did to Snow White. Would have been a whole different Disney movie if it would have ended that way, wouldn't have it? Snow White is the epitome of villains are not born, they are made. If you look at that grim tale and you see what that girl has lived through and what she survived, a piece of apple in her throat for how long? So she was basically in a coma, is what they're trying to tell us, right? She was in a coma, probably from poison and the choking, and she didn't die. There are people who say she lived in there like 13 years. They like to throw that 13 in there. But I hardly doubt a prince would want an old hag. He probably wanted a woman that was probably pretty fresh. He wouldn't want her with long hair on her legs and a little bit of facial hair overgrowth because she's been in that casket a long time. Because we all know your hair and stuff grows a lot when you're just laying around, right? This is the element of what the hell? When you look at the Disney tale to the Grimm tale. So Christians have decided to take this story up and use it to teach. So they look at the apple as Genesis before the fall. So they really focus in on that. And they talk about her time with the dwarfs as her garden time, exploring, living without a care till she has the brutality of, yeah, there is really bad out in this world, where she meets the woman 3 times. And then the marriage of the prince and her is the kiss, the taking of her, the consecration of the loss of her innocence. And this has been taught at that level that you are not holy if your virginity is compromised. That glass casket held her in this safety zone of innocence when that's really not the truth. It was more like a prison for other people to see her and still have her. Any other person would have been buried after their death. It was the vehicle to bring her back, either way you looked at it. They were waiting for a resurrection miracle in this situation with Snow White. She was so good. She was so pure. There's no way she's going out like this. They wouldn't allow it to happen. So when you look at this, how can you focus on the duality? I look at her as an epitome of innocence, unawareness, and trials before she really understood what people were like. And I think for a lot of us, we have this tendency to trust unconditionally. And Grimm is like, yo, wait, some people you need to be leery of. Some things you need to look into. And I think it is a preemptive strike for young girls to learn to protect themselves, take care of themselves, and ask a lot of questions because Snow White was not inquisitive. She did not ask the questions. When the woman offered her the corset, she puts it on. When the woman gave her the comb, she uses it because she was taught to trust people in the castle situation. So when you look at this tale, you can see just how drastically the patriarchy versus our mythical backgrounds teach this tale. I want you to understand the grim mythic impact here. 3 times. Everything happened in threes. Snow White is 7 years old. 7 was a great sacred number in pagan belief systems. It was taken from a secular tale and whitewashed and Jesus washed to fit Disney's need. Why are these tales not told the way they happened? Because nobody would want to see it. No kid would sit through this 3 times. Our children have short attention spans, but as grown women and men, we need to understand what the purpose of these tales are. So when you think about those 7 dwarfs, there are tales that allude to Tolkien using those as a model for part of his writing. There is tales of those being the 7 deadly sins. The church grabbed onto that and made them the 7 deadly sins, where Disney brought onto them as archetypes in modern times. So they wanted to archetype men in those 7 beings. And you see Doc, sleepy, happy, dopey. There's all these things that are reminiscing the environment that the movie was written in. So when you think about this, you just have to look at what the differences were with the huntsman. I mean, there's a big difference of liver and lungs versus a heart. Liver and lungs, if you know anything about human anatomy, that's really bad. She was asking, he cracked her chest and pulled out her inside. I mean, it was bad. Not saying a heart was any better, but that was bad. The intensity of what she wanted and how she wanted it is so disheartening when you think about her origin, where Snow White came from. There's the duality. How one woman's curse was another woman's blessing. And it was the same little girl. So when you look at the things you're given in your life, how can the things you consider curses actually be a blessing for someone else? And how do we need to shift our perception of life to really look at that? So it's a paradoxical magic, grief and gratuity, death and life, growth and loss, happiness and sadness, rising and falling. These ebb and flows are necessary in magic to push you forward. What can you learn from this archetype of Snow White? Learning to embrace what you are to one person and to another and still have the sanctity of who you are. She decided to take the reins in the Grimm's tale and allow the stepmother to be killed. She could have stopped that. You know she could have. She was a very powerful woman at that point in her walk. She chose violence. And no one negates her as a princess any the less. So when you choose to do things in your path, assert the royal archetype of queen, which is what she became, and make decisions that push you forward. Fairy tales are for every little girl, not just little girl. If there's one thing you can do Really look into why it's your favorite princess. Look into why it's your favorite tale, because it echoes within your soul why it is. That is the secret of putting mythic witchcraft into your practice. So many people hear these tales and they stir something inside of you, and then you just toss them aside. And that's not what they're for. If a tale stirs you that much, read into it, figure out why it stirs you. I love Snow White. It is one of my favorite stories. And I never quite understood why. I mean, Mrs. Blackway told it the best ever. If I had a time machine, that would be my one thing. I would want to go back, sit on the carpet, crisscross applesauce with my nap blanket in my lap and listen to her tell stories all day long. Rumpelstiltskin was my favorite, she would tell. But you can't do that. So you need to become those women. That is part of our job as witches. We are storytellers. We are the ones who will pass the tales by the fire. Learn these stories, learn where they come from, put them into your craft. I have a poison apple that I keep on my altar all the time. And it reminds me to be careful, to look before I leap. It is my think twice charm. And when it shows to me in my card pulls or my dreams, I know what it means. Proceed with caution. You need to learn how to use mythic witchcraft along with your practice to push yourself forward. It is an extreme valuable thing. Yes, tales are comforting and we love to hear them and we love to sit in there and listen. But there's more to them than that. They are the actual resource of magic. They are the recorded versions of magic. What about this mirror? What the hell? Like, is everybody overlooking the greatness of the mirror in the story? And guess what the mirror was? A guy. Okay, it was a guy. This was a male mirror. He told her. She was living for the admiration of the mirror. We all have a magic mirror. You ask it every day. How do you feel, sissy? Facebook asks me every day. And it's roll the dice. Do I feel nice or do I want to be a bitch? Some days you need to choose peace. Other days it's violence. What does your magic mirror tell you every day? My magic mirror tells me tons of shit I don't want to see. Tons of shit I don't want to see. So if you don't like your scrying mirror, fucking change it. Only you can control that voice that tells you if you're the fairest in the land. Because every one of us got a little fucking evil queen in us. Don't tell me we don't, because we do. We have been conditioned to be vain, to look for the better parts of ourselves, to see a better reflection. How many fucking filters are there on the internet? Because nobody's comfortable looking like how they fucking look. It's sad. Vanity hasn't dissipated any more now than it was then. The only difference is now we use passive aggressive ways of dealing with it. We say nasty shit about each other instead of just dealing with who we are. The reflection is still the same. You're either the evil queen or you're Snow White. You're one or the other. They are the duality of this story. The evil queen is the Snow White that grew up. And now she's not as pretty as she was. And she's not as wonderful as she was. And she has to let someone else step up and be that. As women, we need to learn when young girls come along or younger women come along, they're not an attack to us. There are charges to nurture and take care of. And that's just the way it is. There is a frailty in our appearance as we get older. It changes. We're not who we used to be. We're not what we used to be. But inside, we're still that girl. Just because your outside changes doesn't mean your inner self changes. The wonder of the little Snow White should live in all of you. And when you read her tale and you feel her running through the forest away from the huntsman, you should feel that fear because he's hunting for her. He's looking for her. She hears what he's doing to the boar behind her and knows that could have been her. Talk about the level of fear. How many times do you have that in you where you just miss the really bad thing happening to you? That's what causes these traumas in our life is the inability to look at the duality. So I implore you guys to look at these tales on a different level, look at the mythic aspect of them. I'm really hoping to be able to pursue this year and look at different tales because I fucking love this stuff. I love how it works. And I love how it goes. Next one is going to be a Slavic tale. So I'm going to look into a Slavic tale. Nikki and I are looking for one right now. She's my Slavic friend. She dives deep into this stuff, and I really would like to work on that. But I really wanted to start the year off with Snow White just because I think she's such a great starting point for this. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tale tonight. Do you guys have any questions? I mean, I hope you all sleep well night knowing that the evil queen wanted to gut the 7-year-old child. But at least you know now, right? So please take care of yourselves, sleep well, and I will see you all soon in the LHC. If you're in Medusa, I'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great night, guys.
You too, Sissy. Thank you.
Bye.